Weekly Outlook, guys, today on Sunday with a remarkable strength in the crypto space following comments from Jerome Powell. We'll shake up the market motivation in our hands at least and look forward what's going to happen this following week starting tomorrow as there might be quite a bit of sentiment change motivation ahead. What's happening at the moment? We see positive trends back in the making. We see the crypto space moving higher again. We see basically also indices moving to the upside. All that might just be ignited or might have been ignited by comments from Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve stating basically that he is gonna cut interest rates at some point soon. That's at least the expectation we see here. He paved the way for interest rate cuts, which is why the US dollar, the greenback, lost some momentum, causing the positive sentiment to move forward. On the economic calendar, this coming week on Wednesday, early morning for the Europeans, we got consumer prices out of Australia. They are expected to kind of rise again. Well, we've seen the market motivation being in line with similar momentum here. 2.3% is the expectation as the market is going to move forward. 2.3% might actually start to cause the Australian dollar to appreciate somehow further. If we're looking at the greenback in regards to that, the Aussie, we see the daily chart is pointing towards a sideways pattern. However, the market basically this current week ending today had basically started to depreciate again. The greenback, the dollar was gearing up quite a bit of momentum in anticipation that maybe Jerome Powell won't cut rates anytime soon. However, basically at the Jackson Hole Symposium, he pointed out that a rate cut is pretty much a likely scenario. We'll point out further why this coming week might tell us as well why there could be some further insights in regards to that. However, the Aussie basically started to appreciate again further, and the appreciation of the Australian dollar basically here at around this 50 moving average, slightly falling trend line is a strong sign that the Aussie might move back to higher levels again, causing the positive sentiment to basically continue. Whether this is going to happen might be debated or debatable because the market momentum here based on this kind of longer term monthly chart initially looked like the market is going to weaken again further off the high points here. And this could very well be the case, right? We could see that the Aussie is going to weaken in regards to this market here as the market and the candlesticks point out. The question is going to be, though, whether the downside momentum as indicated will continue or we'll see upside motivation as the market closed this last week or this current week kind of quite bullish in a positive manner. And that's the expectation, the idea for now, that we might say, hey, the upside could continue. The positive risk sentiment might move on further as well. We see that the risk sentiment here, or that the 50 moving average, the market's weekly candlestick retraced back to the upside. And now this week, starting tomorrow, we could see that the Aussie will appreciate even further. We got the CPI data, and if the CPI data will remain in line, 2.3, 2.4, maybe 2.5%, this would be something which could help this market moving towards higher levels. The Aussie typically should get a push if consumer price data will rise, and hence obviously the upside might continue, and the Australian dollar is potentially expected to move on further, potentially running to higher levels as the market suggests. Well, the upside and the positive sentiment currently is exactly what drives the market motivation. But we shall look as well on what further influences markets here, because we got an array of data, not really super important data, but we got an array of data which is maybe helping the risk sentiments to even move on further. One of the news is going to come basically on Thursday. We got the GDP data out of the US, and GDP data might show another slight downside momentum here. We've seen that the figures have been rather, in a way, kind of mixed so far, but with the quarterly data being expected quite positive here. Let's ignore the unemployment claims because they have not really been extremely volatile fairly recently. But if we see that the GDP figure will remain in a weaker state, this could be something which helps the US dollar, the greenback, to lose some momentum again, and that in turn, with a weaker dollar, might help stock markets, which is actually the opposite side of the idea. However, weaker momentum in the greenback is what might be behind the recent moves in the equity sector. We're looking at the S&P 500 here right now. The S&P starting to move beyond the all-time high again. And the recent trend, it was kind of negative, and it looks like, and I still believe that we see a downturn. We'll tell you why as well. However, right now, we see the S&P rising further. Positive sentiment really is kind of ignited again, and the positivity here with a strong trend is what's behind the moves. Dollar weakness, obviously, rate cuts expected, at least one rate cut in September. That's not far, basically. It's kind of in reach. Might give us some positive sentiment as a weaker dollar helps us to kind of get access to US markets cheaper, and liquidity is going to push to be pushed into the equity sector at first, and that might be behind what's causing the market potentially to rise. S&P expected higher. Daily chart on the Nasdaq also rising off the supportive zone here. We get something else which actually might help markets. We got Nvidia's numbers and we got Alibaba. Let's start Nvidia. The crypto space positive. The demand of chips positive. Nvidia still, and the Nvidia mania seems to drive the big FANG stocks as well, still seem to drive the equity sector. And with the news recently of Jerome Powell, basically this current weekend, we could get another boost just by Nvidia alone. But the technology market in general seems to move on further, and that's the tricky and critical situation here of the supportive range, of the supportive trend line, the 50 moving average, which keeps on rising here further. In regards to the Nasdaq, we had a bullish positive candlestick formation, a slightly negative candle basically on Thursday, and a bullish candle, an engulfing candlestick on Friday, and now the upside towards this all-time high here, happening to then see maybe that the momentum to higher levels will continue, stating basically with this that the Nasdaq might move on further, and that the Nasdaq might even continue to move to higher price levels as well. So upside motivation here in the markets might be something important and interesting to observe. Now, this coming week, we also get further information in regards to price developments, and in regards in particular to the consumer price index, the PCE deflator, personal expenditures. And this one is not expected to give us any motivation whatsoever as of now. Now, we could kind of ask our glass ball what we expect. However, if that figure will remain in line, and it had been fairly recently, we could see basically that this could be an argument again in regards to Jerome Powell cutting interest rates even further in the near future, obviously based on the pressure we've seen from Donald Trump. This might be something which is helping markets to push. Any rise in consumer prices would obviously be kind of a risk of market sentiment event. But currently we see, and we can look towards as well, the euro-US dollar currency pair. That's the weekly chart. The market initially moved slightly lower, but started to appreciate again somehow further. It looks like the market's trend kind of changed back to the upside here. So retracement movement, market pushing higher. Retracement movement, market pushing higher. That's the same in the euro. The pound's done something similar. The pound's trend also, based on longer term charts, still looks like the market might weaken again. But we need a clear break of the lows. We need a clear break of this lower price area here in order to cause the markets to weaken. Based on the weekly chart, we've seen that the market's trend was initially negative, but then started to appreciate higher. So we see it in most of the currency pairs, in particular in the euro, which looks set to push higher. The pound similarly as well might push to the upside, and the Aussie, well, we debated this and how the market performs. Now, towards the crypto space, because crypto is kind of quite interesting at the moment. Looking at the longer term charts as well and talking Bitcoin at the moment, we don't see a strong upside, but we see a shift from Bitcoin's mother of all tokens towards the altcoin markets, and that can be seen in particular in most of the markets like we want to examine today. Now, the Bitcoin is trading sideways and slightly below the 50 moving average. Any slight risk negative sentiment might cause the market to weaken further. Looking at the weekly chart, however, we can see the market kind of weakened, though it starts to appreciate again somehow further. It might be just a matter of time until Bitcoin continues breaking higher, breaking the high point. Too early to say on the monthly chart. We're trading on the 24th of August. So there might be still some time for the market to change direction. So it's not clear in this market for now. And I would also to be honest, leave the Bitcoin aside. Ethereum, on the other hand, extremely positive market moves as we see here. We have seen the basic all-time high here being broken again. And that's the situation we see here right now. I tell you why I'm so bullish in this market right now. All-time high, double top. The double top on the monthly chart, if the market stays below this area, could still be the case. We might see a further correction and the market pushing back to the downside. However, what we've seen here, and that was or is visible, that the all-time high here has been retested basically in the recent couple of trading days. And then this current week, the market initially went lower, offering a retracement to the downside. And I said, look, we could see that the market is going to break lower as well. And we could see that the market will test this previous high points, right? So this triple topish formation we've seen, which was tested, the market broke above it. And now the market fairly, these recent couple of trading days would have been potentially again starting to retest this area. However, in quite a bullish manner, we expect the market to initially weaken first all the way to this level to then see the rocket breaking higher. Why? Or while this idea and this trend might still continue, what we see is that this week so far is expected to close at around the high points we see the market trading at right now, and that might be a strong argument to be in favor of Ethereum pushing higher. So monthly chart, again, too early to say. Monthly chart still shows the upside, and I'm now an advocate again in favor of Ethereum marching higher. Like all the other tokens as well, XRP is looking actually quite good. The current retracement stopped. If the week ends this way at current levels or maybe slightly higher, next week expect just some fireworks maybe as well in Ripple. However, we quite often did not get any fundamental news in order for Ripple to move to the upside, which is not needed as well as the market currently suggests. Solana, similar story, again, is breaking today back to higher levels. The weekend started Saturday, Sunday, the market breaking the high points, which are those areas here, right? First tested double top, market corrected. Triple top in the making? No, the triple top was tested and might still be that the market weakens, but it looks like the trend remains positive, and that even this one here, where I said we could see a left shoulder head and a right shoulder formation in the making. We could still see a head and shoulders pattern in general, and the market might still push back to lower price levels. However, the momentum, as we laid out, is still in favor of all crypto tokens, or the majority at least, to move higher. The indices moving to the upside. US dollar weakness moving the crypto space to higher levels. So there's not much to believe that the markets will correct at the moment. It looks like the momentum, the positive momentum, and potentially even or further several ETF the momentum or motivation might actually add and help the markets to push higher. So we got a ton of data for now pushing potentially Solana as well to higher levels, where even Cardano looks cool. For now, a bullish retest. We've seen a breakout above the trend line here. The market retesting currently this zone, and this might be why I also believe Cardano might be in a positive manner. Similarly, by the way, compared to Dogecoin on the weekly chart, just above this 50 moving average is where the market stopped the correction. The market's lower prices here weakening, retest of the trend line, retest of the trend line. Now this next week might start with a boom, causing the market motivation to basically be extremely positive. So there we go, crypto space potentially following up with what we see in regards to the markets when we look at fundamental data. Back away from the electronic, economic, whatever, calendar, we shall also talk about, last but not least, the fundamentals in the commodity sector. Starting silver, we see that silver's demand might be positively ignited as well. The silver chart looks good to potentially rise even further. We still are below major resistance levels, and that's still the technical pattern here from last month, right? From the July, the market starts to depreciate even further. After this technical pattern here, we've seen the market starting to move further to the upside. However, and that's why I remain cautiously optimistic. First of all, technical pin bar, I might say we see some initial move lower, not happening. Medium term rate cuts, and we see potentially at least one in September, if not even further rate cuts with a delay, usually cause the indices to move lower and cause the demand, economic demand, to weaken as well. If we see the economic demand losing some momentum, silver prices might suffer. Silver as an industrial metal might actually correct further. So I would be, as said, cautiously optimistic for right now. In the near future, I believe that silver prices, after the huge run here, we can see the last basically 2 years also from the 23 US dollar, it hasn't doubled, 80% increase basically in silver whatsoever, might be kind of a positive sign here, might be a sign as well in regards to the weakness and the suffering of the dollar, but might be also something which after a strong move higher, the markets might correct. And this correction we might also see in gold. Gold at the moment, it's far off from weakening further. A dollar denomination, dollar weakness might be what is behind gold prices currently rising. We see the market slightly pushing higher. Any strength of the dollar or anything maybe in regards to geopolitical tensions, Ukraine war may be ending, gold could weaken. The dollar turning weaker, gold might rise. So we have arguments into either direction. However, the gold market at the moment looks set to basically rise for right now, at least unless the dollar's momentum changes direction. Last but not least, the oil market, kind of quite interesting as well, as oil remains basically capped below this 66, 65 area, but oil is rising again. I see this as a technical pattern, as a retracement pattern, but we should debate on how the market ends the month. Well, too early to say, especially this week. Next week, we should get more clarity in these regards. But as long as the market remains below, as long as it remains capped below the falling trend, we could see the oil market weakening further. It looks for now, at least as we see technical retracement, technical resistance way below the 50 moving average, by the way, it looks like oil prices might weaken. Currently, oil might rise as well. Economic activity, in a way, positive. Nvidia earnings, Alibaba earnings this week might be positive for indices, might be positive for the economic demand in general, causing the markets to rise even further. However, as said, if further down the road, down the line, the next couple of months, we see a correction in the equity sector, we will also see that oil prices will weaken and weaken to lower price levels. For now, slightly higher. Medium term, as said, I would be not so positive in regards to this market. And folks, that's all I have on the plate for you here right now. Remain positive in the equity sector in general. Stocks have started a big push. Friday alone, we saw a bit of a 2% rise, at least in regards to our traded portfolio. Please Don't forget to leave your comments under the video to give us your feedback as well. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel, obviously, to kind of get us closer towards the expected 10,000 subscribers. We'll reach soon. Might take some time, guys, but our next and upcoming video, Mark Faber, I'm gonna edit this together, and our crew is preparing social media content for this. So Mark and my conversation in Chiang Mai fairly recently will be released, and don't forget, actually, as said, to subscribe to the channel to not miss the release of this video. Until then, I would like to release you here from rather a bit coldish Germany, where I'm at the moment. Talk to you soon. See you then. Take care, everyone. Ciao.